There are moments in life when you can feel something isn't right. Not just on the surface, but deep in the roots. You sense the imbalance, you witness the quiet injustice, and yet, you pause. Because the people at the heart of it all don't always look like villains. In fact, some are respected. Some have shown kindness. Some have even shaped your life in meaningful ways. And that's where dharma becomes truly difficult. It's easy to take a stand when the enemy is clear, when they're loud, cruel, and openly wrong. But it's much harder when the one causing the harm is someone others admire. Someone who walks with dignity. Someone who once guided you, protected you, or sat beside you in silence. That was Arjuna's struggle. That's what made him drop his bow. Because the real battle wasn't just on the field of Kurukshetra. It was inside his heart. He was torn between affection and clarity, between duty and doubt, between the people he loved and the truth he could no longer deny. Drona had been his teacher. Bhishma had been his protector. These weren't enemies in the usual sense. They were family. They were legends. But despite all their wisdom, they stood with adharma. They knew the wrongs that were unfolding, and yet, they stayed silent. They chose comfort over confrontation. They allowed the throne to remain on shaky ground, knowing full well who had claimed it. So when Krishna told Arjuna, "Kill Drona, kill Bhishma, they are already slain by me," it wasn't an order to shed blood. It was a call to see through illusion. It was not about violence. It was about vision. Krishna wasn't asking him to abandon his heart. He was asking him to see with sharper eyes. To realize that sometimes, dharma means recognizing when people we love are no longer standing on the side of truth. Because truth without action becomes avoidance. And loyalty without awareness becomes a trap. This is what many miss when they read the Gita. They think it's a story about war. But it's actually a lesson in breaking illusions, especially the illusion of blind respect. Yes, tradition has its place. Yes, elders deserve our gratitude. But if their silence supports wrongdoing, if their legacy becomes a shield for injustice, then our reverence becomes part of the problem. And Krishna made that clear. Strike the shepherd and the sheep will scatter. Because corruption doesn't survive alone. It depends on structure. It hides behind honorable faces and respectable voices. And unless we address it from the root, it keeps returning, just in different forms. That's why Krishna didn't say, "Try to change them." He didn't say, "Win them over." He said, "They are already gone. Their truth has left them. Now it's time to stand in yours." It might sound harsh, but sometimes, real love means letting go. And sometimes, real clarity means standing alone. Arjuna wanted another way. He didn't want conflict. He thought perhaps there could be peace without confrontation. But Krishna reminded him, peace doesn't mean avoiding difficulty. True peace comes from alignment. And sometimes, restoring balance means stepping away from the very people who helped raise you. Because growth doesn't happen by following forever. It happens by choosing when to walk your own path, even if that means walking away. And that is the heart of dharma. Not comfort, not sentiment, but clarity. So what does this mean in our own lives? It means there will come moments where standing in truth feels like betrayal. Moments where you'll be torn between the past you've honored and the future you know is right. Moments when someone you once looked up to, a mentor, a guide, even a loved one, is no longer aligned with the direction your soul needs to go. And when that moment arrives, your heart will ache. You'll second guess yourself. You'll want to hold on, not because it's right, but because it's familiar. But Dharma doesn't wait for agreement. It doesn't wait for others to understand. It simply asks you to listen deeply, and then act from what you know to be true. Even when it's difficult. Even when it feels like loss. Even when the road ahead is full of unknowns. Because truth doesn't always feel good at first. But it will always lead you somewhere real. And that realness, that alignment, is what ultimately sets you free. Let's take a step back. Why did Krishna speak so directly? Why didn't he soften his words, or shield Arjuna from the pain of these decisions? Because clarity doesn't come through sugar-coated advice. It comes through honesty. The kind that cuts through confusion, not to hurt you, but to wake you up. Krishna saw Arjuna's compassion. He saw his loyalty. But he also saw how the heart, when overwhelmed, can become an excuse for inaction. So he didn't attack that softness. He simply showed where it had started to cloud his judgment. He didn't say Drona was evil. He said Drona had already stepped off the path of Dharma. His body was still here, but his commitment to truth had gone. And that meant Arjuna had a choice: to honor old bonds, or to honor the deeper truth calling him forward. This wasn't a moment of revenge. It was a moment of responsibility. Because some people will use their past kindness, their status, or their story as a shield. They'll expect you to stay quiet, out of gratitude, out of fear, out of habit. But Krishna reminds us, once someone stops standing for truth, you are not bound to follow them. Respect the good they once offered. But don't let that stop you from seeing who they are now. Because if you keep pretending, if you keep watering a tree that's already dying inside, you'll keep harvesting pain, season after season. Dharma is not blind loyalty. It is conscious action. And sometimes, the most dharmic thing you can do is to walk away, with respect, but also with resolve. So how do you know when it's time to act? You'll feel it. Not as anger, not as ego, but as a quiet truth that won't leave you alone. You'll feel the heaviness of staying. You'll notice the silence that no longer feels like peace. And you'll realize the cost of pretending is now greater than the cost of letting go. Then comes that breaking point. The moment when you finally say what you've been afraid to say. I can't stay silent anymore. That's when Krishna whispers again. They are already gone. You are just holding on to the shell. Let it fall. Because when you remove something from the root, everything starts to change. Not just on the surface, but in the system, in the air, in the generations that follow. It's not destruction. It's realignment. So what now? You move forward with steadiness. With compassion, yes, but also with clear eyes. You stop waiting for permission. You stop asking everyone to understand. You simply walk, with humility, with truth, with the quiet strength of someone who chose the harder path, because it was the right one. And yes, it might hurt. It might cost you the closeness you once treasured. But what you gain is something unshakable. The knowing that you stood in alignment with your soul. That knowing will guide you, long after the dust settles. So the next time you are asked to choose between comfort and clarity, between loyalty and dharma, between illusion and truth, think of Arjuna. Think of the weight he carried. Think of the voice that steadied him. And remember that sometimes, doing what's right doesn't begin with a grand declaration. It begins in the quiet moment, when you stop asking for permission to do what you already know must be done. Because that's the moment illusion ends. And that's when dharma truly begins.